Okay, so I'd like to call this meeting to order. I welcome everybody to the first executive committee meeting of the year. And can we start with a roll call?
Yes, Chair Tyson.
Yeah, here.
Director Rennie.
Here.
Makachek.
Present.
Walia. Present. Thank you. I'll note Director Martinez-Beltran is absent, but we do have a quorum.
Great. Do we have any public comment on items not listed on the agenda? Oh, I see we have some attendees, but I don't see any hands raised. Okay. All right, so we'll close the public comment and move on to the consent calendar items, which is number one is approve the minutes of the November 14th meeting. I would say let me look for a motion.
So moved.
By
I did not attend the meeting, but I assume that since if everyone votes on it, it'll be fine.
Okay. All right, let's look for a second. I'm looking at one of two of you. Give me some sign.
I'm willing to second it,
There we go.
even though I wasn't there either.
Oh, all right.
I'm going to
That's
trust
right.
that staff did a good job of writing up the minutes. I've known them for a long time and trust them.
Okay, well, I was there and it looked right to me. I had a chance to preview it before it went out as well. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any public comment on the agenda or the minutes? I do not see any hands raised, so let's go for a roll call vote.
All right. Chair Tyson.
Yes.
Director Rennie.
Aye.
Makachek.
Aye.
Walia.
I trust
you.
I was also not there. Same comment.
Thank you. That passes with Director Martinez-Beltran absent.
Great. Well, we have let's move on to our regular calendar. We'll start off with item number 2, the CEO update. Take it away. And Girish is muted.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair Tyson. So I have a couple of things to update the board on. I believe I may have updated you at the last executive committee meeting on this, maybe even on the board, given a hint of it, but I'll say it. So we have some challenges on reliability in the state, and there's a trickle down to SVCE. So we'll be presenting to the board. We'll have, we're calling it like reliability challenges, opportunities, and strategies. And that's the bigger picture of just looking at the state of how reliability in California is handled and what our obligations are and what our responsibilities are. I'm also providing this, we'll be providing this in context of penalties that we are facing on not being 100% compliant with purchasing enough what they call RA capacity for the year 2023. There are several load-serving entities that will be in the same situation as we are. We have spent quite a bit of money. The amount of money that is budgeted for an amount we spent on RA for 2023 is about 400% more than what we spent just about 4 years ago. So what used to be about a $15 million, $15 to $20 million budget item is now between $70 to $80 million a year.
Wow.
And in spite of multiple RFPs that we put out, it's just no response. So we did a lot. We purchased a lot of reliability capacity, but we were unable to basically close the gap completely. So I'm bringing this up to you. Obviously, we'll have a lot more discussion and information shared with you. The context of what I'm providing you today is really giving you more of an advance notice of this, and there'll be more information that we'll provide. The penalties itself are not known because the CPUC has not issued what they call a citation. That could come any day or it could come in the next month or two. So we'll both inform you obviously about it. There'll be some ramifications on our current year budget when Amrit comes to you with the mid-year budget, which we're planning on bringing to you in March. And I say the board, bring to the board in March. We'll have to make some adjustments for both current market prices for reliability capacity and also penalties. So in the February meeting, we are also planning on this broad strategic kind of look so that we do have a few new board members. And of course, we have some board members with new roles. We'll just reset and talk about the California situation today as to what reliability is, what the state is expecting, what the challenges are, and what the opportunities are. So that's item one I want to update you on. If there are any questions you have for me, I'd be happy to take them. And I see Rob has a question.
I'm unsure if I want to take you down this discussion tangent, but when I think through it and we say, it's almost like we're volunteering to be a victim when we say we went out and we tried to procure, there isn't enough to procure, sorry. My first thought is, well, maybe we should be more, instead of accepting it, we should do something about it, right? Build our own or something to that. And I started thinking, maybe we're doing that a little bit with the discussion of purchasing into the gas peaker plant, which we didn't really want to do. So I think we're starting to do that, but I sort of want to make sure we're not just volunteer victims, which is, the first thing you say, well, there isn't any to buy, we couldn't do it.
Yeah. So Rob, great point. We have talked to the CPUC and we'll continue to talk to them. There's a lot of communication we'll be doing on this, which is the system is broken essentially. And the rules that the PUC has put in place, it's almost unworkable right now. PG&E has a role in buying capacity under what's known as a central procurement entity obligation they have. They ended up buying about 50% of what they were supposed to buy. So there's a lot that's broken in the system, and we will be pushing back on that, on the brokenness of the system. So I think, Rob, you've also highlighted the bigger picture and the strategic kind of deal of like, okay, what are our options? We shouldn't just be passive, right? What are the options we have to contribute to reliability? So that's part of what we'll be presenting as to what the different options are on reliability. So more to come. We'll have a more detailed discussion. I see George has his hands up.
There's a flickering hand there. It's good we have a few enough people you can see everybody here. I wanted to sort of pick up on what Rob said, but from a different angle, and that is, what's the premium we're willing to pay? I'm thinking strategically. What's the premium we're willing to pay to have kind of a clean record? In other words, so I was just thinking of a parallel here. This is not something I would ever do, but somebody could sit down and say, if I cheat in the carpool lane, I'm saving this much money, and my ticket, I get a ticket this many periods, and I can do this economic thing and tell me how much I want. But cheating in a carpool lane is wrong, okay? And so, are we willing to take the penalty if it's 10% more than it would cost to do, or if it's double what it would cost to meet? I don't think we've talked about that a little bit. My own sense is it needs to be more than a break even, because to not have a penalty is significant in terms of our outlook and our reputation.
Yeah, and that's the balance point. A couple of years ago, we did have a penalty of about $500,000. And at that point, we purchased quite a bit of RA, a lot more than what we purchased for 2023. And you're right. So there was the cost of the penalty was significantly lower than the cost of buying RA, and just a small portion that we didn't buy. So that's something that we'll tee up as to what the penalty cost is versus the cost of buying RA. Things have changed just in the last 2 years. The two things have changed. One is the market prices have gone up even higher, and the penalty regime has changed. So now they have a penalty regime where they provide a certain amount of points as to how much you've not procured, and the penalties change, they multiply. You can go 2x penalties and 3x penalties. There are also some legal issues that we are trying to clarify around this penalty regime. So the things that are happening as we speak. So this is more of keeping you up to date. I think the point about the balance of how we want to deal with this, penalties versus the price, that's one. But there's another piece also. It's just the availability. Sometimes it's just not available to us to buy.
Okay.
And if I could add on, to look at it back from the other direction, if, from your how much do we want to spend on that side, what if you look at it from the other direction? We don't want to have a bad reputation, or we can afford the penalties, but we really don't want to have a bad reputation. How much do we spend to not have a bad reputation when there's a risk, and it's probably a big risk, that the whole system could be changed on us because it's clearly not working? If we say, okay, this is the system, we're going to do something outside to make sure that, we keep up a good reputation, and we spend a bunch of money doing it, and then they change the whole system on us.
Right.
We've had that danger before where, okay, if we bought our IA, wait a minute, they just turned it over to somebody else to buy it and ours doesn't count anymore. There's all those kinds of dangers also in it.
Yeah. Rob, another great point. All the comments are good, and Tina, I'll get to you next. So this gets to, there's a lot of risk management issues and trade-offs. So we will discuss this both at the board level, at a policy level. There'll be some things on strategy that I'll discuss at my meeting, the Risk Oversight Committee meeting that is confidential. So I'll just say there are other risks. It's not just reputation. On the negative side is deregistration. So we can be deregistered. The PUC can basically say you are not fit to be a load serving entity. So it's kind of like, George, if we get into the carpool lane and say, I got the money, I'm just going to be in the carpool lane every day, say, I don't know if the CHP will pull your license or the state will pull your license, but that's the kind of thing. If we say, if we play the game, we can, the deregistration. So we really have to be, we as a load serving entity have an obligation to satisfy certain responsibilities. And that's what we've done, right? So we have done multiple, more than a dozen RFPs this year for capacity. And all these get documented when we provide our compliance filing with the CPUC. We go through everything that we've done, what we bought, and then there's a process that we go through with the PUC. The citation is the first step in the process, or the first step in the penalty process, and then there's steps of appealing it and things like that. And just so you know, all this is being done while the whole reliability framework is changing. So we are operating under current rules now, and that gets to what Rob was saying. The whole system is now changing from 2024. We're going to go into what's known as a 24R reliability system. So when we buy and make these decisions, we need to also incorporate regulatory risk. We can do something based on the rules we know, and then factor in, well, what if those rules change when we've made those commitments? Tina, you had a question?
Yeah. Nothing profound to say, but just wondering, how are the other entities dealing with this problem? I heard you say we are not the only ones. I'm hoping we are one of the better ones. Still doesn't solve our problem.
Yeah,
What creativity is coming from other groups?
I don't know yet because much of this is confidential information. I'm just sharing this with you at this point because I know. I know our position. But also have like very high level information that many other load serving entities will be, especially in Northern California. I don't think Southern California has the same problem. And we can get into the details of why that is. It has to do with just the way reliability is purchased. It's kind of Northern California does it one way. Southern California has done it a different way in terms of how the central procurement entity has performed. The central procurement entity in Northern California, that's PG&E, has not performed. They've basically not been able to purchase everything that they're supposed to purchase.
And Mr. Chair, in case you haven't seen it, I think Mr. Carney's anxious to speak on this whenever you feel is an appropriate time.
And Brian
I see
has a
that.
question.
Brian had a question. I was going to go to him, but thanks, Rob. I did see that.
This is a follow-on to Tina's question in a way. If PG&E has not been purchasing power like they should have, that they have in the past, are they subject to any kind of sanction? No.
No.
Okay, let's hear from Mr. Carney.
Let's go ahead. I don't know if you need to promote him. Yeah, you do. Okay. Good morning, Bruce. We're ready to hear you.
So I think I have two questions, maybe three. So the first question is a what if. So suppose that PCE managed to purchase all of its required RA and SVCE only purchased half. If there was a hot summer afternoon, would PCE customers be able to ride that out without worrying about brownouts because their utility had procured 100%? And down here in Santa Clara County, we would have customers at risk because we hadn't? Or do all load serving entities essentially suffer to the same degree when there's a shortage of generating capacity?
The latter.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was guessing. Second question is, are the current mandates for the amount of RA reasonable in your opinion? I'm under the impression that they were cranked up from something like 12% to 15% a few years ago. And I don't know if the PUC is being overly cautious at the expense of utilities and the expense of ratepayers who have to cover the costs of unneeded RA.
Great question. We'll get into this in more detail when we do a presentation and get into a deeper dive. Yes, the planning reserve margins were increased quite a bit for the current year. At the same time, we know from a climate change standpoint, loads are increasing, peaks are going higher, and in terms of planning, the PUC and CEC is factoring electrification. So more EVs, more building electrification, and that moves our load up. But in the short term, they did increase the planning reserve margin, and that has also led to some problems with capacity. Because they raised it, some of the capacity was sucked out of the market, we believe, and therefore less capacity left for us versus a couple of years ago.
Thanks. And if I can ask just one more question.
Right.
I read a day or two ago that the approval process to continue to keep the nuclear plant in Southern California online has essentially run into a major snag, and there are many possible future outcomes, but one possible outcome is that it does have to close and never restart after 2024 and 2045. Other possible outcomes include a interruption in nuclear generation for a year or two. Has that factored into all of this yet, or is that a little too new to be involved?
Yeah, it's way too new. And frankly, in reading that, to me, it doesn't seem like a big surprise. It was a 2009 application that was withdrawn in 2014 that got resubmitted now. So the Nuclear Regulatory Commission basically said, a withdrawn submission that was first made in 2009 is way too dated for us. If we accept this application from you, PG&E, it'll set a very bad precedent for all the other nuclear plants in the country. Please do submit, so there's another submission that PG&E is making. It was kind of like they were just doing everything possible. And so it was the rejection of a very old application, which at least on the face of it, and I'm an amateur in that area, but it seemed like, yeah, of course they would reject it. But I think it's too early, Bruce, to call nuclear being out of our portfolio, either on the short term or for that longer term period. If it is out of the portfolio, there'll be heroic efforts will have to be made to keep the lights on post 2025.
Thanks for that explanation, Girish. I saw that article, but I didn't catch all of those details. Did you want to continue with the second half of your report?
Yes, I did. Thank you. Done while I. Sorry, I'm just picking up a file that I want to. There we go. I would like to share my screen. Give you a quick heads up. Okay. So I wanted to give you also a heads up on my thinking on our strategic plan for next year. I know we just barely approved in September our strategic focus areas, but we're constantly thinking about the future. And Amrit is going to come to you with the mid-year budget in March. In the April-May timeframe, we'll kick off the next year's budget cycle and starting up with an update on our strategic plan. So last year, you approved these 5 strategic focus areas. And as I think about them, I think that these strategic focus areas, I just moved one slide with a little bit more detail, and I'll be happy to send this to you. Every one of these focus areas has one slide attached to it. Every one of them seems to be still valid, and each one of these strategic focus areas are multiple years long to actually get something tangible going. So I just wanted to share my thoughts with you so the exec committee can also be thinking about it. I'll be coming back with a little bit more detail in the March-April timeframe. But again, this is the second update, just more of a heads up. This is my thinking, and you'll be seeing more in that March-April timeframe. And then, of course, an invitation for you to ask me any questions. If you want a recap of this, I'm happy to do it offline also. Chair Tyson, that's the end of my report.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Girish. And if I were to kind of summarize what I think I heard you just say, you're looking at this strategy focus areas as not being an annual thing, but more of a longer term, and to make sure that we're approaching things a little bit higher level, a little more strategic, and also recognizing the time frame for things to get accomplished.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Do we have any questions from the executive committee on the rest of the report? I don't see any. And any from the public? I don't see any. So I'm going to say thank you for that. So let's move on to item number 3, which is to elect a chair and vice chair of the executive committee. And so by way of history, in this years, the chair of the overall board served as the chair of the executive committee. I don't know if that was just automatically or just how it worked, but the last couple of years, what we've had is the vice chair of the board has served as the chair of the executive committee, serving as a bit of a, I won't say training ground, but a bit of a transition sort of approach. Not that there's any guarantees in terms of who's what in the future. So as we look first at the chair, I guess I would like to propose, and I hope I'm not surprising you, Tina, that we name Tina as being the chair of the executive committee, and just want to see if we have any discussion or comments on that.
I'll second that.
Okay. All right. I guess we should do a vote, right? So, are there any comments? We don't have too many people there. I don't see her shaking her head no. So
She hasn't run away yet.
she hasn't run away yet. So let's go ahead. And then do we have any public comment? I do not see any. And so let's come back to the board and let's do a roll call vote.
Okay. Director Tyson,
Yes.
Rennie,
Aye.
Mekachuk,
Aye.
Walia.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries. Director Tina Walia as chair of our executive committee for 2023.
Great. Thank you. I don't know. I assume do I hand the podium or the lectern or the gavel or something over to her right now? I guess
If she's open to that.
if you so choose.
That works for me, George. Thank you so much. And as you
Okay.
said, it's training ground. I'm in a group of a lot of experience, so I'm sure you will help me through the hiccups, all of you. So thank you so much. Okay, with that, we move on to the vice chair of the SVCE Exec Committee for 2023. Do I have a motion for a name?
I nominate Mekachuk.
I will second that.
Wonderful. Any comments, discussion on that?
The only comment is there's no guarantees. Last year's vice chair was Nisa, who flitted off some other place. So it doesn't mean that you turn it, but it's good to have a progression and a sense of, and a sort of backup plan. So that's my only comment.
Thank you. Andrea, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Chair Walia,
Aye.
Tyson,
Yes.
Rennie,
Aye.
Mekachuk.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries. Director Mekachuk is our vice chair of the 2023 executive committee.
Wonderful. Congratulations, Brian.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And with that, we'll move.
I'll step in and make a comment if that's okay.
Sure.
I think that this is a really well-run JPA, and I think having our governance in place and staring into the future as best you can at any point in time is a really good idea. And I commend the group and Garisha's leadership in putting this together. So I think it's a really good idea. And you know, if there's ever emergencies or anything like that, it's really helpful to have some redundancy in thinking through a succession planning to the extent you can.
Brian, thank you so much. If that were a motion, I'm sure you'll get a unanimous second. When you take it to the board, I'm pretty sure everyone will really appreciate and agree with you wholeheartedly. So thank you, Brian. And I realized I didn't call for public comment on item number 4 for either the chair or the vice chair. So is there any member of the public who would like to say anything? Please raise your virtual hand. I don't see any. Okay, let's move on to item number 4, which is to select a regular meeting schedule for the exec committee meetings for 2023. And Andrea, I hand it to you.
Yes, thank you so much. So being that this is a new group that's meeting in 2023, we wanted to revisit this regular meeting schedule. So as a starting point for discussion, we are proposing the 4th Fridays of the month with time TBD, depending on your availability. If we were to go with the 4th Fridays, on your screens would be those dates in which we would meet. You'll see in November and December, of course, if we decide on the 4th Friday, we'll land on one of these 2 dates, whichever your preference. And prior to discussing timing, I would like to note that we were in touch with Director Martinez Beltran, who is available on the 4th Fridays of the month, with a preference for mornings before or 10:30 or before. So this was just a starting point for us to have the discussion on possibly what time, if 4 Fridays work for all.
Thank you, Andrea. Any thoughts, everyone? Brian, please go ahead.
We are virtual now. Does this committee have to meet in person, or can we be virtual? Because I think that fits into the time of the meeting if we have to attend in person.
So I believe you don't have to meet in person as long as a quorum of the executive committee is meeting virtually, but within our service territory. And you will have to post your address on the agenda prior to the meeting and allow for the public to attend at the location. So that's the new regime post-March. So my expectation is that these meetings will now be mostly in person. And if you do want to attend remotely, for example, I believe the board member from Gilroy will be coming into our regular board meetings, attending it remotely, and he has an address that he's already provided that we're going to post where he's going to attend from. It's going to be Gilroy City Hall.
So may I summarize what I heard you saying? What we need then is we need to have a quorum of this committee be able to attend in person at the designated time for sure, otherwise the meeting doesn't happen.
No, just a nuance. You can meet virtually, but a quorum of those meeting virtually have to be in the service area.
Right. These are the traditional Brown Act rules.
Correct.
Where I'm going with this is we at Monte Sereno City Hall, we've got the ability to have it public noticed and attend in person, and that would be my preference. But I think, and that's in the service territory, but I think what I'm hearing is we still have to have a quorum at the SVCE offices.
No.
Oh,
That's what I'm saying.
That's the AB whatchamacallit that had that term. The traditional Brown Act, as long as you post your location, which I think your city hall option kind of solves the privacy issue, then we're good.
And it's very close for me. I can walk there from my house.
So Girish, perfect. Thank you, Rob, for saying that, because I was just going to ask you, Girish. So in other words, Yuan could be in her city hall, Brian and Rob could be in Monte Sereno City Hall, and George and I could be either together at Clean Energy SVCE or both of us independently virtually. But all locations have to be posted when the agenda goes out, which is 72 hours prior, because this is regular Brown Act meeting.
Correct. And so we have adopted a procedure at the last board meeting on the protocols around that. And our request is a week before the meeting, we would want to know where you are attending from. Okay,
wonderful. So with that in mind, is there a preference for a time? I can start by saying 4th Friday works for me. Typically you don't get my best early in the morning. So that said, that's a disclaimer. But I think the best solution would be for us to find what works for all the members of the committee, as well as what's best for staff. George, please go ahead.
And I've heard from staff that they're not so keen on the Friday afternoon meetings. And I will say, I have a standing commitment on Friday mornings, but I am free starting at 10 o'clock. So for me, I like 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. I'm kind of agnostic. It doesn't matter that much to me, the difference between those two.
Okay. Any preference? Brian, please go ahead.
If 10 o'clock would work for you, George, I would say 10:30 gives you a little buffer. I don't know if that's better or worse or whatever. The other thing is that I would like to contribute Monte Sereno City Hall because it's just so tiny and it's so easy. And Rob, you could get there, and Tina, if you ever want to come over, that's fine. It's public noticed. It's a very intimate sort of thing. It's not a big giant council chamber. So that's where I would intend on participating from, not from my home. I just go a few blocks over there. So, and 10:30 works with me on a Friday, 10 o'clock works with me. And I think setting it up a week in advance, confirming it that, you know, I think that's a really, really good idea, and I will do that.
Rob, your preference, please.
Tina, if I may make a,
Go ahead, Girish.
I do recognize you're not at your best of the morning, but I'll just say that Yvonne expressed.
I'll work with that. I'm just
10 a.m.
totally.
And then what we would, well, so 10, it works for staff, let me just say.
10 is the best for staff.
Either one, 10, 10:30, so we do
Okay.
10, we get 10:30 is good too.
Okay, Rob, your preference, please. You're fine. It works.
Yeah, I'm fine, I guess.
Okay, okay. Brian, thank you for offering that also for me. That saves me some driving time, and especially since it's going to be noticed a week ahead of time. If I'm running late in the morning or there's a traffic issue, I can always change, even if I regularly plan to come to SVCE offices. So, George, you have.
And my morning commitment is in Cupertino, so I would just come up to Sunnyvale. I would come to the office.
Okay, so 10 or 10:30, both work for me. Any preference? Please make a motion, one of you, and let's move with that. Fourth Friday. Girish wants to say something, right, Girish?
10,
Okay, Girish wants 10. Do I have a motion? Brian?
I'll make a motion for 10 a.m. the fourth Friday of every month as set forth in the proposed 2023 executive committee meeting schedule.
Wonderful. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Great. Any other thoughts? No? Let me quickly, again, I forgot, public comment. Don't see Bruce here. So any public comment, please raise your virtual hand. Seeing none, bring it back. Andrea, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. And I will begin with you, Chair Walia,
Aye.
Vice Chair Mekachuk,
Aye.
Tyson,
Yes.
Rennie.
Aye.
And thank you. That motion carries for the fourth Fridays of the month at 10 a.m. for a regular meeting schedule. And I did want to note, though, in November, December, we will reschedule that given holidays.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrea. Let's move to item number 5, which is 2023 board and executive committee meetings schedules with a recommendation of summer recess. Andrea, your report, please.
Going along the same vein of scheduling here, we are proposing a summer hiatus, which we've done in the past. We have done July. We know that a lot of member agencies also kind of take a month off, and so we want to be respectful of that. So we are recommending that we not meet in July for this group, and that we recommend to our board of directors to also not have a regular meeting in July. Of course, this doesn't mean that if something were to come up that we would not have a meeting. We could call a special meeting if needed, but we are just proposing that July be a month for no executive or board meetings.
Works for me.
Works for me.
Works for me.
Great. It works for me. Let me call public comment. Please raise your virtual hand. I don't see any. Bring it back. Any thoughts? Motion? Brian?
I'll make a motion for the 2023 board meeting schedule to meet at 7 p.m. at Cupertino City Hall, as set forth on the dates in that schedule.
I think we were looking for a motion on skipping July.
Oh, sorry.
For both the board and exec committee,
Which includes skipping July.
Okay,
as well as for the executive committee, skipping July. Okay. I'm sure Andrea got the motion. Second. Thank you, George. Other comments? Andrea, roll call vote, please.
All right. Chair Walia,
Aye.
Vice Chair Makachuk,
Aye.
Tyson,
yes.
Rennie.
Aye.
Did I miss anybody? No, we're good.
Thank you, Andrea. Takes us to the last item, item number 6. It's a program snapshot for Electric Showcase Award and report from CEO Girish Balachandran.
Yeah, I'll just start this off to provide some context because we have some new members of the executive committee. So last year, Chair Gibbons had a suggestion to provide the executive committee information on programs that SVCE is running. So these are our decarbonization programs. You tend to hear a lot about our power supply programs and what we do there. And then you also hear about our decarbonization programs, typically when we adopt a budget. And we do so many things on programs that she thought it was a good idea to provide an information update to the executive committee so you have some background. We have more time at the executive committee than we do at the board for these kinds of information updates. So I just want to give you context that that's what we've been doing, and we found it useful, and just get comments from the board, etc., on programs. And so with that in mind, I'm going to hand it over to, that's a context, and Director of Decarbonization Programs and Policy, Justin Zagunis, is going to introduce the presentation for you today.
Great, thanks, Krish. And he covered most of the background that I was thinking about. I mean, this really is intended to be informing you all kind of two things. One, just the programs that are going out into your communities and things that your residents are seeing from SVCE, and also to give you a little bit of a sense of some of the maybe key design decisions that the team went through as we were going from the previous board approval and kind of doing the design, thinking about these programs and what that process looks like, some of the key things that we thought about and decisions that we made. So I encourage, if you have any questions or comments, on the clarifying side, to please ask Michaela today. And if we've really just whetted your appetite and you want to know more and you have, really want to get into the program, we love that. We'd love to talk with you about it. And I encourage you to follow up with us offline. But the intent of this is really a kind of a short presentation just to give you a flavor of what we're doing. So with that, I will hand it to Michaela Pippin, Communications Specialist Extraordinaire, and the program lead for this program.
Thank you, Justin. Hello, directors. I'm Michaela Pippin, the Principal Communications Specialist, and I'm very excited to be here today to talk about the Electric Showcase Awards. Next slide, please. Before I get into this year's version of the Electric Showcase Award, I'd like to give a brief history on the program. So in 2019, SVCE launched the first all-electric showcase awards with the goal of developing case studies of buildings in SVCE territory that had fully electrified. Throughout that program, we were able to award 18 properties that included residential, a multifamily, and a few commercial. And we're very excited to be bringing this program back for its second version, this time with a focus on existing building electrification success stories. So as the conversation around existing building electrification policies continue to ramp up, we want to have case studies and customer testimonials from the folks in our community that have taken steps to either begin or complete their home or building electrification. We have customers in our communities that are real people that have real experience in there's a variety of paths that these customers are taking and have taken to reach electrification, whether it be appliance by appliance as their old appliances burn out, or ripping the Band-Aid off and doing it all at once as part of a larger remodel. So we plan to showcase these customer stories by developing case studies and then hosting an in-person tour at the end of the award season. The target audience for this program, so the case studies and the tour, are our local decision makers. So we're targeting elected officials, community leaders, and any relevant member agency staff that's going to benefit from having this information shared, being able to look at these customer journeys and hear directly from these customers. And our applications are opening today for this program, and we're planning to wrap up the case study and marketing material development in summer. Next slide, please. So a few details on the application itself and the awards that we'll be offering. The application has two main categories that the judges will be considering. The first is the level or percentage of electrification of the property. So again, we aren't limiting these applications to all fully electrified properties. We want to look at the process. So we're open to someone who has just replaced their first appliance or has fully electrified and everything in between. Their level of electrification will be considered in the award amounts though. And then the second consideration is the customer journey. So as mentioned, this is really to showcase their story. We don't want to showcase one story, we want to showcase many. So the narrative of this application is really, really important to us to learn why the customers chose to take these actions, potential barriers and challenges that they faced during this process and how they overcame those. And then also hearing about what they're enjoying about the benefits of using all electric technologies. Because these applications obviously have a wide range of responses we could get, we decided to mirror that range in the award amounts as well. So our single family properties will be eligible for between $3,000 and $6,000 awards, and our multifamily or non-residential properties will be eligible for between $5,000 and $10,000 awards. Another nice bonus that we've added to this program is that any winners that choose to donate their award money to local community services, SVCE will match that donation, just to add another community investment piece of this program. And then once we have received our applications and have selected our awesome winners, we will get to work creating these case studies. So that's going to look like us going to these homes or businesses to get photos, on-camera interviews to film some videos, and really tangible customer testimonials. Just wanted to share a piece of marketing collateral that was a result of the 2019 Electric Showcase Awards. That's a yard sign that says award-winning all-electric home. I received this photo to my email just a few months ago, so a few years after we had distributed these yard signs, from a past winner saying that it's still proudly displayed in their yard and that they still get neighbors that are walking through asking them, what does that mean? So we're excited to revamp some of these marketing materials to keep this conversation going. Next slide, please. And in addition to having these printed and digital materials displaying the case study stories, we also want to offer an in-person experience for our local decision makers to feel what it feels like to be in an electrified office space or residential building that wasn't designed to be all electric at construction from the ground up. So these in-person building tours will be targeted at the same audience. So it'll provide an opportunity for your agencies to walk through these buildings and also hear directly from the customers that took these actions on their own to electrify. Of course, these building tours are dependent on our award winners' willingness to let us take a group through their home or building, but we're hopeful that we'll be able to host a couple residential and non-residential tours. Next slide. Thank you. So that wraps up the high-level details of the program. Applications have opened today and will be open through March 6th. And we'll be reaching out to your agencies with information on how they can share this opportunity with your community members. And I am happy to take any questions.
Michaela, thank you so much for a lovely presentation. And Girish, I am thrilled, and Justin, thank you. I'm thrilled that we have this place where we can talk about all the wonderful work we do in terms of the programs, because I have always wondered, I want to know more, but the board meeting is not the place to be digging into details, and I can't spend the whole day there. You guys need to do your work. So this is perfect to hear about this. Wonderful comment from George, I'm sure is coming. Go ahead, George.
Why, thank you. The last time we did this was 2019. Is this something we intend to do every 3 years or every 2 years or something? Do we have a plan for frequency of this?
I can chime in on that one. We did it largely, I mean, in 2019, part of the reason we did this was to support that initial reach code effort. We wanted to get these case studies for new construction and kind of help with materials, help with photos, help with stories. And as Michaela said, we're kind of looking at this now as we start thinking about existing buildings and policy. And so we wanted to go back and say, okay, let's get some more case studies that are more on the existing building retrofit side. What does that look like? What are those photos? What are those people saying? And so, you know, we could run this again, but I don't think we have a cadence in mind, because this is really being driven by those two other efforts where we want some materials and we want some information.
Great, thank you. My other comment is I attended, so our town has an environmental initiatives committee, and I attended my first meeting as different city council members. We rotate who does what, and for some reason I got allocated to that one, and it was quite interesting. In our town, we have part of the discussion was we have the town is funding an electrification assessment process, and we're having trouble getting people to sign up. It's very few, and that's a puzzle to us. And the second thing is, the most lively part of the conversation was somebody who'd done the work, and they were hit with, what kind of contractor did you use for electrical? Where did you get the plumbing? And so I would say the next level, say, of granularity in terms of outreach and help might be to, what's my next step, and who, you can't really say who not to call, but who to call.
Just to put a plug in, we do have a list of contractors who have worked on our heat pump water heater program. And so I'll make sure we send that over to you.
Yeah.
That's information very useful for everyone. Can you send it to everyone? Because I'm sure other cities can use it too. Brian.
Excuse me. I was part of the customer program advisory committee in 2018. And I actually got an award in 2019. I think, Michaela, you came over here to our house. Yes. So there are photos of our house and what we did on SVCE's website. I thought that was really nice to get that, and the award, etc., the recognition, but that was for new construction. Where am I going with this? It's very difficult to take an existing home and have people come and look at it, because they want to see it, touch it, feel it, and they want to hear it. And you can't go see heat pump water heaters, but I think it's really valuable to be able to do that. And if there's any way you can encourage people that are applying for these awards to have them open up their homes, because that's a pretty significant thing to allow people to come into your home. And I don't want to drill it into it too much, but I think George, you'll understand what's going on in people's reticence in certain communities with some of the burglaries that are going on. I think you know what I'm referring to. I sat next to Linda Swan the other day, last week. So people do not be surprised if they're not open to doing that. But I think this is a good idea. And I really think it'd be good on the multifamily side. And my final point will be that people don't understand how the performance of a heat pump water heater, it's kind of like an electric car. Like my son, daughter, my wife and I, we can all shower and we can have hot water. And it's with a heat pump water heater, they work really well, just like an electric car can accelerate very quickly. So anyways, those are some comments for you.
Thank you. I see Bruce's hand up. Any other thoughts from the group? Okay, let's take public comment. Bruce?
Yeah, thanks. The comments I'm going to make, I'm happy to follow up with Justin and Michaela, but just in brief, back in 2007 through 2009, I worked at Solar City during a time when it was going from a brand new startup to the #1 residential solar company in California. And we relied a lot on referrals from early customers to their friends and neighbors to become later customers. And we offered a program similar to what's being proposed, but one that I would say is more scalable, because you didn't have to pick just a few winners. Any Solar City customer could refer new customers and be compensated financially if they ended up buying a solar system from Solar City. And the company also paid for parties where a Solar City customer would invite their friends and neighbors, maybe a dozen or so, to come see their inverter, see their solar panels, hear the happy customer talk about it. And there would be a Solar City sales rep present to answer questions, perhaps set up an appointment to check out the neighbors' homes for solar installation. And rather than just having a few potential winners chosen, anybody could play. And those referrals were really a powerful way to get people to engage with Solar City. And I think that the contractors would be willing to spend an hour at an event. I don't think that SVCE has the staff to be there every time, but maybe for starters, to get a sense of how this could all work, it would be a good investment of staff time. As I recall, 15 years ago, Solar City would pay up to $200 for snacks and drinks at the party, and then the referral fee was, I think, $200 if a neighbor bought solar, and that would go back to the person who provided the lead. Some salespeople realized that the point at which people were most enthusiastic about solar was on the day that they signed the contract. And I remember some of them would actually get people to email their friends, all their friends, on that day saying, I just bought solar from Solar City, you should do it too. So there's a lot of ways to tap into the enthusiasm of somebody who's making this investment, this transition in their fuel use, and to get communities excited. That can happen every day, not just during a short duration prize winning contest.
Thank you, Bruce. Bring it back to the committee. Any other observations or anything you would like us to think differently moving forward, Brian?
I neglected to mention one item, and actually two. In the minutes of the executive committee, the last executive committee meeting on item 5, when I made a public comment, I said that when looking at the average monthly bill comparison, consider how it will change with more people having electric vehicles and the rates they will pay for electricity for those electric vehicles. Garish, you've got a copy of a letter that I received from PG&E, and I kind of felt like we were the poster child for electrification. We've got 4 electric vehicles, we've got an all-electric house, etc. And I got a letter from PG&E saying, hey, you've been using a lot of electricity. We're moving you from the from the EV rate to a time of use rate. And that was part of, I believe, my opinion, PG&E increasing, changing the rates so that they generate more electricity, and it has nothing to do with me conserving electricity. And, you know, as we move to electrification, I'm now have a disincentive to electrify. Anyways, and Girish, feel free to take Joanne's name off that, the letter, whatever, and circulate it. I, as a poster child for electrification, I also think that the communications that are directed from the CPUC and or through PG&E to take me off a rate does not encourage electrification. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Brian, and I will follow up on that in the broad communication themes you raised. Thank you for that.
Thank you. So there is, I don't see this as an action item, but if there are other thoughts from the committee, this is a wonderful time. If not, I think we are at the end of our meeting. There is nothing on the agenda of overall comments, but if there is, I can pause for a second if there's a comment. If not, I'm happy to adjourn the meeting. Do you need a motion to adjourn the meeting, Girish, or just go ahead? Okay, Andrea says no. The meeting is adjourned at 11:04 a.m. Thank you all. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of the day and a wonderful weekend.